want to welcome everybody to Wrestling Travel presents the Lockdown Sessions. And today we are joined by Jody Fleisch. Jody, how are you doing today, buddy?
I am pretty good, all things considered. All locked up, but in good spirits. So, yeah.
That's the way I've been answering the questions, too. Everybody's at, how are you doing? I'm like, oh, have you looked outside your door? It's crazy out there. So, is it as crazy over in the UK?
Oh, man. I'd say so. But, well, I would have said so maybe a couple of weeks ago. But in the last few days or a week or two, then maybe the stuff's changed depending on which area of the state you're in. I mean, lockdown seemed pretty crazy. But then to me, it kind of leveled out. You know, people sort of got more used to it. But then obviously the latest round of the apocalypse has started, and now, Jesus, the world's gone tits up.
It has gone tits up. It's mad. So we are actually, I'm calling you from Wisconsin over here in the U.S. as I shut my phone off, and we actually have a wrestling show happening tonight down near Milwaukee. I'm not going to be able to attend, but it's getting back.
Wow, it's an actual attendance,
an actual event, an IC. And I know I spoke with Frankie DeFalco last week, and Frankie was telling me that, you know, they're going to buy the head thermometer, have some social distancing, make people sign off that they have not been around, you know, anybody that has had the virus. They've got a lawyer drawing stuff up, and I was like, wow, it's extreme, but you don't want to be the first one that messes it up. For everybody.
Yeah, and if it's so by the book, I mean, and there's a lawyer involved and stuff, I'm assuming it's, you know, treading the thin line of the legal system.
Right. So I'm hoping that everything goes all right in the wrestling, because I've been saying it for weeks during this pandemic is, man, once wrestling is able to come back, I know the talent is going to be given 120% as usual, but now these crowds should be really mad for it, you know, ready to rock. So it should be pretty interesting.
I'm sure there'll be a fun phase, man. People raring to go and stuff. Yeah, myself included. I'm one of them. Like, I've missed it. When it comes back, I'm going to enjoy the shit out of it.
Well, I was thinking like how many shows that I could have went to, but I'm like, I don't feel like driving an hour. And now I'm like, man, I wish I would have went to all those shows. So I'm ready to go to as many as they can come. But we're going to come back around to this pandemic thing. But what I wanted to do is get everybody, Wrestling Travel, this is going global, our YouTube. I say that with a lot of confidence, but I'm not sure. But let's back up. Jody, when did you first break into the business?
I broke in 1996 to what little of the business there was in the UK at the time. So we're going back, what is it, 23 years, something like that? Much like yourself.
Huh. What and where did you, like, who trained you? How did you break in? I know I could look this up on the internet, but it's much better to hear from you.
It's more legit, right? So I don't know if you've heard of a local group in the UK. They're not around anymore, but they were called Hammerlock Wrestling. And cool. They were ran by a guy called Andre Baker. It was a small school in Kent, a little area in the UK. And at the time, to the best of most people's knowledge, it was the only training school in the United Kingdom. So you're talking about that weird time where wrestling had been very popular in the UK when it was on TV every Saturday. But then it got taken off, and there was a big dip that lasted quite a long time. And I'm kind of slap bang in the middle of that time is when I broke in.
People don't realize that, like, today, I can go on the internet, I can go on Facebook, and I can find a wrestling school.
Easy, right?
Pretty fast, but back in our day, it was not so easy. How did you go about finding the school?
Yeah, like you say, it was not easy at all. It actually took years. Me and me and a friend really wanted to break in. We heard that we'd have a better chance if we went to an Olympic freestyle wrestling club, because at least it has the word wrestling on it. That was the closest thing we could find. So we found one of them, then the next one, then the next one. And after about 18 months or 2 years, we were told of this school in Sittingbourne in Kent, and then went down. You can imagine, and you probably went through something like this yourself when you first get in during that time frame. When you first walk into the school, like we walked in and there was an actual ring up, and we'd never been that close to a wrestling ring in our lives. And there was, you must know Doug Williams.
Yep.
And there was another guy, basically Doug and this other guy who happened to be 6'6" or something like that, a big monster guy. We're literally in the ring when we walked into this little, it was a really little room. And you see like a full-size ring with 2 full-size wrestlers going toe to toe. So it was a really dramatic introduction, you know? And it was great because obviously we were seeing that. We got in there and we were like, wow, this is awesome. And then from there we were, well, me in particular, I was hooked. I couldn't get enough.
What I remember most from the first day of training is how dumb I was. You know, you watch it your whole life and you think, and now it's just, it was like pulling back the curtain in little ways, and then you never watch wrestling the same again. But it didn't hurt I mean, I still enjoyed watching it as a fan, but it was like, oh, immediately I could start picking some stuff out and watch it in a totally different way. So, what was, when you were growing up, who first caught your eye? Who were some of the wrestlers that made you go, hey, I kind of want to do this?
Right. So I guess it depends. The very first would be, like, I was a WWF kid. I was watching I used to love the Ultimate Warrior and the Undertaker. So they would have been the ones that first caught my eye and made me love wrestling. But then, you know, a few years later, I remember being a big Shawn Michaels fan. And then at some point I must have started, you know, using the tape traders or buying tapes off the tape traders who were around back in the day. And then I think I came across ECW, and then it just all flooded in. I was buying this and that and the other, and I loved workers like Rey Mysterio Jr., Liger, Sasuke. I remember when I first watched Barely Legal, ECW's first pay-per-view. Was that 98? It's around that time, 97.
Yeah, I think it was 98, yeah.
98. And the Michinoku 6-man tag match. It was, I don't know if you remember, it was like Sasuke, Taka Michinoku, Dick Togo, you know, 6 of those guys. And and I really loved that match. And that was during the time when I was like a bit of a sponge, you know? So just I wanted to watch as much wrestling as I could and do as much wrestling as I could. Yeah.
Now, as a good journalist, which I checked out Wikipedia. Now, did you train at the Michinoku Dojo? What am I saying?
No, I remember stopping by the Michinoku Pro Dojo once, but I started going on tour for Michinoku. I didn't, that probably guess 1998. There was a show in London, England, where they had Tiger Mask and the referee Ted Tanabe.
Okay.
And if you remember a guy called Grand Naniwa as well, he's passed away now. But they brought in those 3 guys for a show, and that coincidentally was around or not that long after the time when I'd watched them guys on the ECW pay-per-view. Then I'd sent off for a bunch of Michinoku tapes and New Japan, All Japan tapes. And so anyway, they, I guess the 3 Michinoku guys must have seen me at that show, and then they brought over me and 2 other English guys, or 2 other UK guys, sorry. And that's when I started regularly touring for them. I didn't go to, like I say, we stopped by their dojo once, but that was the only time I spent in the dojo. It was straight away just on tours.
This is why kids need to watch this YouTube show and not rely on Wikipedia, because we're breaking down the walls here. You know, tape trading, you talk about Tiger Mask. I think that was my first experience with like eBay or tape trading was the Dynamite Kid Tiger Mask, like 7-match series. And
yeah, that's with Siam and the original Tiger Mask. But yeah, that was a big part of my education as well. Like I sent off for those tapes. I had a Best of Dynamite Kid tape as well. It was fun times though, right?
Yeah, man. Ahead of the time, just watching that, rewinding it, and go, whoa.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. And where you had to send off for them and stuff, you kind of valued it more. Obviously, it's on everyone's phone now, isn't it? So you can just type in a name. But remember that feeling you used to get when the tape came through in the envelope through the post?
Yeah. And you know what? And I'm like, I'm counting pennies. I can't really afford to do this. But I'm delivering pizza at the time and in college, and I'm going $7.50, and
Totally. Good times, man.
I would get around with a group of the guys, and they would order one, I would order one, and then we'd have a big night of it. But
we didn't do that, but we done something really similar. So me and my mate Scott, we'd order the tapes. Had a friend called George, Colombian guy, and he had one of these satellite dishes. In the UK, there was, when satellite TV was a bit more popular, he had like a special satellite dish which got all these, I don't even know if it was Spanish or Mexican or Colombian TV channels, and he managed to get CMLL and AAA. Like 2 hour each on like a Saturday or a Sunday. So we'd all go to this house, ECW, Bellied Eagle, loads of other stuff, and then so again, same time frame, same sort of vibe, right? I think loads of people around the world must have been living like that too, and I'll bet you that half of them are the generation that started, at the same sort of time as me and you did.
Yeah, people have it really good right now, but I do miss those times. I mean, you had to find it. You had to go out and search for it, and a lot of people. I remember being a kid and reading about Mid-South in the magazines, and then
me too.
The $1 Million Man moves to the WWF at the time, and because I've only read his name in the magazine, I'm like, oh, this Ted DiBiase, like you had no,
yeah.
And then they're like DiBiase, and I'm like, who's that?
DiBiase, oh yeah. Same sort of thing, man. But we used to have PWI in some of our newsagents, not all of them, some of them. And and this is before that 96 sort of period. This is a few years before then. But we, you could watch WWF, and just from watching it, you would assume that that's the only professional wrestling in the world. Then we'd walk into a newsagent. We found Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Like, what? Yeah. There's other companies and other wrestlers. Oh, The Undertaker is really alive. He's not a dead person who sits up out of the coffin every week or whatever it is. But yeah, man. But obviously, again, we're going so far back.
Yeah, no, I know. I could talk about old school. I recently started rewatching. I never got to see it on the first run, but old World Class episodes on the network, and they're outstanding. So moving on, because I could talk about this all day. You said you don't have a time frame. I will run the battery out on your phone talking old school wrestling. So you train, you get in with Hammerlock. Then what's your first few years in the business like? I mean, obviously, I'm wondering because the UK scene, is it a whole lot of indie wrestling going on at that time, or not really?
Well, I think there might be a bit of a misconception that there wasn't anything going on. There was wrestling going on constantly. There was a lot going on. I don't know if you've heard of the holiday camps, the summer camps. So we've got in the UK, there's holiday camps. There's camps where people, where families go and vacation.
Okay.
And it's kind of a bit of a staple of British culture. It's really old school, I guess. But they're not the most glamorous of places, most of these holiday camps. But they constantly had professional wrestling shows on these camps that they wouldn't attract. People wouldn't go just for wrestling. It was families on holiday, and there happened to be wrestling on. But So they were going constantly. There was town shows, as in, you know, shows in town halls and stuff like that. But at the time, a lot of the shows that were drawing were, you know, that were drawing a lot of people were, I've forgotten what they call them now. Basically, they were shows where a lot of people would dress up as big famous WWF wrestlers.
Almost like
The
cosplay,
Undertaker.
right?
Yeah, a bit like cosplay. Yeah, like the Undertaker. There was a Legend of Doom. It was who played it? Was it Ricky Knight? Yeah. So there was a lot of them, and obviously the reason most of the fans were turning up to those shows was to see the WWF stars. They would get there, they'd be kind of disappointed when they seen that it was just some guy.
Oh, now I'm following you. I'm not talking. You're not talking like the fans dressing up like the Undertaker.
Oh no. So it wasn't
talking like the Undertaker or that old school where they'd have. Yeah.
Yeah, they were called tribute shows. They're called tribute shows.
I got
you know, so there was a lot of them at the time. But so wrestling was, going back to your question, wrestling was going on a lot during that time period, but it wasn't as popular. It came off of TV, so the boys had no exposure. You know.
Yeah.
The numbers were down in a lot of the houses and stuff like that.
So tell me about your first time coming over here and wrestling in the States. How soon did that come about?
Well, that was in 2002. I started in 96, 97, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So 6 years in. I guess I'd got my name out there a bit from these Japanese tours that I'd been doing, and CZW and Ring of Honor split flights for me and Johnny Storm. You know Johnny Storm?
I've read up on him, doing my due diligence. Yes.
Yeah, good mate of mine. So those two companies basically split the airfare to take us out there. So we done like a tour. To this day, I don't really know who arranged like the route we took, because we worked for a lot of companies on that tour.
Yeah.
But obviously it was a learning experience. It was a really fun time for me as well, and Johnny. You know, we got to, I mean, the first show we done was at the ECW arena, and I was a big ECW mark from the Tape Trader times, like not long before that.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of fun times in that tour. I felt a bit like a tourist, to be honest. Oh, this is ECW. Oh, this is HWA and OVW. Oh, this is Ring of Honor. It was just like a bit of a sample on a lot of different little
Yeah, you get it.
yeah?
I did the same thing, you know, not that I got to go to many, but just being on the show with some of the guys that you've watched on TV and now you are colleagues.
Yeah.
It's just surreal at times. And you get used to it and everything's cool and you try not to be, but that little kid inside of you is always like, man, this is cool.
Yeah, I've come to realize that more lately. He's always there, isn't he? The little kid that goes, man, this is cool. I think it's part of wanting to come across professional and a lot of that stuff. And again, it happens so regularly that you get really used to it. But there's a little, definitely the little fan in your head is.
I don't know. A lot of the guys like to say, oh, because when promoting some shows later on, I had a show coming up in my hometown, which had not had wrestling since Vern Gagne ran the AWA. And I'd put on some pictures. I'd taken pictures with guys regularly. Usually not when I'm on the show, but I'll go to a show as a fan. And, you know, I try not to be a mark. I'm not a mark. I'm like, bro, we're all marks or we wouldn't be in it. We would not be doing this. So I remember one of the first picture I ever got taken, King Kong Bundy was on a show. It was like 2000, 2001. And I'm going, excuse me, Mr. Bundy. I'm like, and I'm like, I already feel like a dick, but I'm like, can I get a picture? And he goes, please, call me Chris.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. King Kong Bundy as well. And I'm going, you're King Kong Bundy to me, God damn it. It's one of them.
Yeah. Call me Chris. I'll try, but there's no way. You were in the big blue cage with Hogan. What?
Yeah, I totally hear you on that one.
You know what surprised me the most about pro wrestling, and I realized that it's not It's not everybody, but how nice and friendly everybody in the business has been. I've talked to a few of the guys that I've interviewed that have done some shots with WWE. I'm going to be in Baron Corbin's group. WWE roster, they said treated them better than some of the indie locker rooms. Like, didn't look down at them for being enhancement talent. Just was like, hey, welcome to our show. And I thought, man, that's cool, because that's the wrestling I grew up with. Was everywhere I went, most of the guys that had made it, most, not all, but were super pleasant.
I totally hear you, man, and I agree as well. It's a good feeling, isn't it? When you're like, oh, so I used to watch this guy as a kid, and I used to love, he used to entertain the hell out of me. And now I meet him, and I find out on top of that, he's also a good, down-to-earth, normal dude. I mean, I couldn't count the amount of people that I've had those thoughts about,
Yeah.
It's awesome, man. It's one of my favorite things about wrestling.
Usually it's don't meet your heroes. But in wrestling, it's a little bit different. I always say, go meet him. Mm-hmm. I was scared shitless in 2015 to meet Ric Flair, because I'm like, man, I've heard some stories. He couldn't have been nicer. And then I start to wonder about these stories. Even if I'm not Ric Flair, if I'm out on a night on the town with my family and you come up bothering me, probably not going to get a pleasant experience from anybody besides like a celebrity. Ring of Honor, you got to work with the amazing Red.
Yeah. That's fun, man.
I mean,
he's
at
still
that
doing
time, that guy could bring it. And he still does.
He's still, yeah. It doesn't surprise me. He's an athletic dude. Again, it's that time, So there were a lot of us of that generation. You can see them. I could see them at the time. The ones that move really well, they keep themselves fit. A lot of those guys, they're still going, man. I see Matt Cross semi-regularly. Still the same,
I talked with PCO last week. Yeah. I called him a crazy son of a bitch because he's doing shit at 52 years old that he's like, I never even thought about doing it at 25. But I'm like, you're not still, they're wheeling you out to the ring, PCO. You're going at ridiculous levels that we never saw before. So I was like, you're crazy, but I love it.
But when he talks about it, he doesn't even talk like it's a big accomplishment. It's just like it's a passive thing when he mentions it, isn't it?
Yeah. I've always wanted to do a vault, so I thought I'd try it. Okay.
Yeah. Awesome, right?
Yeah. I tried it once and I kind of messed up my knee. I waited for my knee to heal, and I tried it again. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting video sent to me from a show in New York where he moonsaults on top of the turnbuckle outside the ring. It's like, man. Because you know what? You know this as well as I do. You not only got to trust your body on that moonsault, you got to hope those guys are ready for it downstairs.
Yeah, I've experienced that a few times. Yeah.
One of the things I read, now this is Wikipedia again, Jody, but you had a series of matches with Ultimo Dragon?
Yeah, I did. A series, maybe 3 or 4.
3 or 4? You did? I mean, how was that? Because that's a guy that I regularly watched and was impressed with on like WCW when they started.
Actually, yeah, same. I was watching him at that sort of time as well. And from what I remember being impressed with. He was such a pro, and I do remember. That's it. When you work with a guy you've watched, and all of a sudden you're taking their stuff. You know that one? Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen this. That he done let's do 5 turning kicks, and then like a jumping reverse kick. Like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 you'd sell, and then he'd hit you with a jumpy, spinny one. I remember selling them 3, 4, 5. Oh yeah, I knew what I was doing because I'd seen it 100 times before, So I remember a lot of that. It was great. It was a lot of fun. Also, the company we were working for at the time, they were a pretty cool company to work for. It was NWE in Italy, and they used to draw really well. It was those tours for that company, it was a bit like a holiday. So imagine a cool lads and ladies holiday, and then in the midst of that, you're also again working these fun matches with these fun people to work with. So good times.
Awesome. One other thing I wanted to make sure I asked about was, you wrestled for Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in the Battle Los Angeles tournament. Now that's it's a pretty iconic venue and area, you know, and then that tournament. Would you have Shima in that round, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What was that like? I mean, because that, if I'm thinking of that right, they pack a lot of fans into a pretty. I mean,
it was really busy.
Intense,
kind
right?
of it was my first. Well, no, I'd worked for them years and years ago, but it was my first one I'd done for them in a long time, and it was like it struck me as a bit of a carnival vibe.
Okay.
You know, like it's an annual thing, isn't it? The Battle of LA. And you really got the impression that a lot of the fans there, well, maybe all of the fans there, they've waited for this all year, and then they all come and get together. It's like there's definitely like a party type vibe there. It was great, man. The hall was lovely. The crowd were buzzing. Really fun show.
That was one of the things I've read about the Pro Wrestling PWG is they've asked them like, hey, why don't you go to a bigger venue? And the guys are like, no, we're staying here. So I thought that was pretty cool. You know, when you want to keep that vibe, instead of taking that step for the money grab, you're keeping that kind of exclusive. What's the difference? Now, we're wrestling travel, so we travel all over the world, bring fans to some really cool events, WrestleMania, Wrestle Kingdom. Have you noticed a difference from, we'll just keep it on two, the U.S. fans versus the U.K. fans? Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference. I might not be able to describe it, is the unfortunate thing, but I find differences in from fans in one venue versus another venue, let alone fans from one continent versus another continent. You know, that's another one of the good things about wrestling is you can do the big shows or the little shows. They're all kind of special in their own ways. You know, for example, in that Best of the Best 2 tournament, the CZW one in 2002. 9 out of 10 of the fans in the venue at the time, when me and my friend Johnny walked out, they had no clue who we were. They weren't going to give us any favoritism or anything like that. It was more the opposite because we were skinny. So they probably didn't look like we belonged, you know. But once they warm to you, you basically got them. And it doesn't really matter what you do in the ring or performance-wise, they're going to be on your side. So that's the Philadelphia fans. But there's different. You know, even in individual states, loads of them that I've worked for in the US, you can see the differences between that, you know, this town or you know, this city, that city, and the other.
Speaking on behalf of the Americans, when we're able to watch like a WWE show that goes over to the UK, I mean, we love it because there's the football. I was going to say soccer, like the football chants going on, and you can really like the crowd getting into it. It reminds me of the first Raw after WrestleMania, where the fans are really into it, almost taking over. So we do enjoy watching and listening to the UK crowd. My next question has to also do with travel, since we're wrestling travel. This is kind of going to be like asking you who your favorite kid is, but can you tell me some of the favorite cities that your wrestling has taken you to? Keeping my travel.
It's difficult, man. It's really hard because, again, like a lot of experiences in wrestling, there's one doesn't really beat another. You know, favorite. Well, I guess I was just talking about Philadelphia, so that one's fresh in my mind. But then I couldn't really say that that's not been my favorite place in the US to work. But then I could talk similarly to that about New York. You know, did we do Nashville, Tennessee was really cool to work in front of crowds there, just because of the tapes I'd watched, you know. My favorite place in the States to wrestle.
Have you gotten down to Mexico at all? Being that you,
I haven't. It's one of the few places I haven't. I've always wanted to actually. Arena Mexico is meant to be great, right?
You're right. Yeah, I hear that all the time.
Say there's nothing like it. You can work here and there, but this is, you know, I've not had the experience, so I couldn't comment. You know. I'd like to.
Well, I'll talk to the guys. travel. Yeah.
Awesome,
Once this
man.
pandemic is over. My main question for doing these things called the lockdown sessions, and I've got to ask it. And I've told you before that I try to go 10, 15 minutes and then I ramble on forever. But what have you been doing during this pandemic, the shutdown? What have you been doing to stay sane as far as wrestling?
Mate, to be honest, training is keeping my head on my shoulders. I think I'd be insane without it. Luckily for me, towards the start of lockdown, I got myself 2 adjustable dumbbells. So I've got 2 dumbbells that can go from like 2.5 up to 20K. 20K is still pretty light as dumbbells go, but I can get all my like my bro split done with those 20K dumbbells. After that, I do circuits. Luckily, about 80% of my cardio training is variations on squats, push-ups, sit-ups. So I can still get all my I can still basically replace my week in the gym in my front room, which is great. Apart from that, my day goes downhill. No, I'm kidding. I've watched a lot of TV. I've watched more TV in the past 10 weeks than I'd say I have in a couple of years before it. Ozark. Binged the hell out of that from series 1 to 3. Have you heard of that one?
What is it?
Ozark it's called.
I have heard of it, and I have not even watched an episode.
It's well worth a watch. It's
well worth it. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bit weird with my TV. I went back and watched a bunch of Hammer House of Horror movies. They're like old school English horror from the 70s and 80s. I've watched a whole bunch of them. But yeah, it's that sort of thing. I've ate a lot. I've really enjoyed it. The food's been great.
Yeah, I had a good buddy ask me if I was eating healthy, and I said, "Yeah, I'm eating healthy, but I'm eating for like 3 or 4 dudes, and I live alone." That's the thing, you know.
That's kind of my life anyway, man. I'm eating healthy, and then I'm eating unhealthy on top of all the healthy. But
right,
it's fun. What are you gonna do? It's great.
And the main reason I haven't watched Ozark is I believe I share a Netflix password with my stepfather, and he's in it, and I don't want to mess up his order, so we'll have to jump on that. How about, have you gotten a chance to do you watch a lot of wrestling now, go back old school now that you've had the time?
No, it's one of them things with me. Like I wish I did, but for whatever reason I don't. I haven't watched, apart from, if I'm scrolling through Instagram or Facebook, like bits will come up. Right. But it's one of them things, like I just never really get around to watching it. I've got my friend's network, WWE Network password. So at moments I've went back and I've watched like old nostalgic, like, is it early 90s or mid 90s WWF? What I watch? I'm talking like 8 months ago or something, but I watched Bret Hart and 1-2-3 Kid. I watch random 90s matches like that but it's every few months at best. I'd like to. I really should. Because it's indie and everything these days. So I should talk.
It's so hard. Like, I haven't turned the TV on in so long. I'll stream some stuff, but I always thought, hey, if you ever had a time, I've got 100 DVDs. I'm gonna watch them all, and I just look at them and go, find something else to do.
It's nice to know for me that I've got the option, though. Yeah. So never say never. I might.
That's
right. Just watch.
And I've actually pulled some down from the shelf and set them near the DVD player, and that's as far as they got. So, but one of these days, I've often, speaking of older school wrestling, I shouldn't even say this on camera because somebody else is going to steal this idea. But since you trained right about the same time I did, when I'm watching wrestling lately, I want to do an article or some type of things that are missing that I don't see anymore. I don't see an atomic drop. I don't see the Russian leg sweep. I don't see the monkey flip. I don't see a regular headbutt anymore. There's a lot of things. I mean, I know everything.
Real headbutts these days, aren't they?
Everything progresses. I feel like I could train somebody and just run all these old school moves, and it would be so new to the audience today that they might get over. I mean, again, where's my question here? I don't have one. But
I hear your point now. I hear your point.
The sunset flip, you'll see a little bit of, but I've gone back and watched some wrestling, and the old school tag team matches and the guy whips one guy into the corner. His tag partner runs down, goes over the top turnbuckle, so the guy runs into his back, and that protects him from that turnbuckle. I'm like, man, it's a lot of stuff is just gone by the wayside the more I look at it. We've got some cool flipping stuff, but I missed the stories.
I'm gonna miss the name drop, but somebody called and did that spot with me a few months back, and it's not coming to me who they were. But yeah, someone brought that back a while ago. It'll come to me as soon as we get off the phone. The thing in the corner, they whipped me. I reversed it. Sven jumped over the corner so that he didn't take the bump in the corner. He came out and bumped me. We done it again, and I might have turned it around and ended up hip tossing them all or something like that. Who was it?
It's so cool. I mean, it's so minute. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. At least you and I are on the same page.
Yeah, but at least that's kind of cool in a way that when somebody does do them, they get that big reaction, and then and then they can say to their friends, "Hey, look at that! I got that reaction because I done that thing. Oh, you haven't seen that before, have you?"
Yeah, I feel like I'm gonna do a tape study and just go make a list of moves that I haven't seen in a long time, because that atomic drop one, I'm like, honky tonk.
Are you talking about the front to front atomic drop or the heel swing to front and gets with the kick in the legs and the oversell?
That one's my favorite.
That one into the over the top rope bump to the outside,
Yeah. And then you remember Honky Tonk Man used to just grab his ass and
sell the crap out of that one. The spot thing, yeah.
Man, I miss that. So I have to ask you, Cal, my colleague at Wrestling Travel, Big Daddy Cal, as you know, tells me I have to ask you about the movie Fighting with My Family.
Oh yeah.
So what did you do with that movie?
I mean, it wasn't a big part or anything like that. I think I played a trainer at WWE's training facility. I think Vince Vaughn was the head trainer, so I got like my little scene with Vince Vaughn and all that. I didn't speak. Wish I spoke. Would have got paid better if I spoke as well. But it was just a lot of fun. Again, the Knight family, who the movie was about, they're really good mates of mine, and they're the best people as well. So for me to be stood there, like there was a moment when we were doing some scene, and stood watching Vince Vaughn, who I watched in loads of my favorite comedy movies. He's talking to actors who are playing Little Rhea, Paige, and Zach, and I'm just like, how did this happen? You know what I mean? That, like, to me, they've just been my friends. They're people I know. And years go by, and then all of a sudden there's this big, and it's a Hollywood movie. That's the bit that I couldn't get over. It's an actual Hollywood movie with famous actors in it. So it was really, it was a bit surreal would be an understatement. I was so pleased for them as well. You wouldn't really find anyone that deserves that more than those guys.
Yeah, that's one I'm like, I'm going to see it in the theater, and I need to.
It's actually a good film. It's actually an enjoyable watch, I mean, I enjoyed that. I watched it the first time, and obviously it's going to be cool for me because I'm in it and it's about my mates. So that's one thing. But then I made sure that I left it a good few months and I rewatched it, and it still stands up. It's an enjoyable flick. I got my DVD.
I got to get the DVD. How did that part come to you? Did you get a call from the Knight family, or?
Man, I did get a call from the Knight family to do a show for them, and then who was it? It wasn't Zach. Yeah, it was Zach. He booked me for a show, but then he'll argue different. But my version is he booked me for a show and then forgot that he booked me for that show. Usually it would be me that makes a mistake, not him. But this time I swear it was him. I then turned up for that show from London to Norwich. And they were like, "Joe, it's good to see you, man. Why are you here?" I said, I'm booked, aren't I? No, you're not. Oh, okay. Well, you might as well go on then. I was like, yep. So they put me on, paid me. Then I was stuck for a lift home. And it happened that Steve Merchant, the guy who directed it, and his film crew were there filming a documentary, and they travelled up from London, which is where I live. So I got a lift back from them in a very posh coach with their very fancy wine, a lot of it. Got dropped off home, and then they put me in the film, turned up to filming, and they bumped my part up, so I got more money and a better part. Yes. So it was all good, man. It's pretty cool, right?
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a better story than, hey, somebody gave me a call and I got a part. You're in the right place at the right time, and you charmed whoever you needed to charm. That's awesome. That's a cool story. What was it like being, Hollywood set now? How's the green room and how's the food? That's
I've never done extra work or anything like that, but the food was banging. It was really good food. There was like big selection of great meals and loads of cakes after the main courses. There was a lot of waiting around. I don't know if I'd want to pursue a career as an extra, but it was a good laugh. We spent about a week filming it, I think. Filming our bits in it. Obviously, the whole movie took way longer, but yeah, it was fun.
No, that's cool. Now, just like we were talking about, if this is a bad, we'll avoid the question at all. We'll edit it out. Just like we're talking about meeting wrestlers and how cool they are. Meeting like Vince Vaughn, was that cool?
He was great. He's a cool guy. He grilled me for a while. Actually, there was one scene in the movie. Edit. There's one scene in the movie where me and Vince Vaughn's character happen to be, I guess, talking, and then Paige walks in before we turn to face her. But obviously, as we're not talking about anything in particular. The focus of the scene is Paige walking in, right? So we're basically just stood in front of each other. We might as well be miming. So I guess to make it seem legit, he thought it'd be a good idea to actually have a conversation. It makes sense, right? And then he started, I'm assuming this isn't going to get back to Vince, he started asking me all sorts of questions about Rhea and Zach and Roy, who are my mates. Again, like this is it was a bit of a weird conversation to be having, and basically ins and outs of their relationship with Alberto. So that got a little strange. It seemed like he really dragged it out. I think he was, from his side, he was probably wanted to avoid an awkward silence. Wanted to research the characters that he was making a movie about. Probably mostly them two things, really. But it did get a little strange. It was still fun, It was again, it was one of them ones where I was looking from the outside in, like, what's going on here? Why is one of my favourite actors asking me these kind of intrusive questions about my mates? But yeah, it was still, and I'm not like, mate, I might have a Hollywood career kicking off from this, so I don't want to put the block on myself without Vince. But it was an interesting moment.
I'm going to be 99% sure that Vince Vaughn will never watch this. You never know. Because I've got extra work in my past, so maybe we could do some sort of buddy cop movie or something. I mean, Hollywood sees this.
I did have the fantasy while making it of The Rock walking by and going, "Oh wow, he's got it. He's the one." We can do the next big action movie together. Hasn't happened yet, but lockdown's on, innit? So he can get in touch with me maybe after it finished.
I got a feeling that
there you go.
Hollywood is probably, I take that back when I say Vince might not see this. I think that Hollywood really has been paying attention to the lockdown sessions. So I don't want to take up all of your time. I'm going to kind of wrap it up here. But for those of us who don't know already, and can you tell us how to follow, keep an eye on you on social media? What are some of the things as fans that we can follow and see what you're up to?
Just a regular for me. I mean, I'm not great with social media. I'm trying to get better at it. Just Instagram, Twitter, Facebook a bit, normal stuff. Shoot me a message on Messenger or via Instagram if you want to get in touch.
Cool. And how about merchandise? Is there Jody Fleisch stuff out there?
There is, but it's all in my loft, and it only really comes out when I'm on the way to shows. I keep meaning to have had people asking. I need to get back to them. It's probably the right time for it. All that stuff, you know. I mean, obviously, I can send stuff out and stuff like that, but just keep your eye out for when I'm on a show near you and turn up to the show, and I'll be there, hopefully with merch when I get my act more together with a bit more merch. It seems to ebb and flow, you know.
Yeah, and that's the main thing is buy a ticket, come out, watch pro when it comes back, of course.
Definitely.
And I always do this. I always say final question, and then something else hits my mind. When a fan, because I've had this happen many times, I want to go, a fan will say, oh, I want to go see wrestling. And if they want to go to WWE, AEW, and go to a big arena, I say, do it. It's awesome. You'll have a great experience. But what I get told to me often is, well, there was a amateur wrestlers down at the high school. Like, I'm not going to go to that. I'm going to go to WWE. What are fans missing out on when they totally thumb their nose at an independent show? Because I'm going, man, I'm a wrestling fan, but I love these independent shows.
Yeah, see, I'm a bit,
not more.
Yeah, I'm a bit out of touch. Does that still happen? Do people have that mentality? Well, they'd like to go and see a big WWE or
yeah,
WWE.
Unfortunately, that's what I run into a lot in Wisconsin. Is just but what they'll do is there'll be a show that there's shows that we had Tommy Wildfire Rich out here last year, but that's amateur pro wrestling. I'm like, man, you're going to go see guys that you might not have ever heard of, but ask them their story. They were trained by this guy.
Mm-hmm.
They've been on these bigger shows. Plus, if I go to a show that you're on, let's say you're on a show out here at a high school, if I boo you, you're going to hear me. And plus, at intermission, when you've got all your merch there, I'm going to be able to go up, shake your hand, and ask you a few questions. It's not going to happen. I'm not knocking it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, they're different things, aren't they? You know, I mean, at least they were a few years ago when I was more connected with the whole thing. It's two completely separate entities. You know, it's a lot more close. It's in your face. Like you say, a fan can shout something or boo, and the guy in the ring is liable to hear it, turn around, eye contact, communication. You know, it's you get a different type of work rate on these sort of shows. It's two separate things. If they're, I guess if they're a proper wrestling, if they legitimately enjoy wrestling, once you say to them, hey, come check this out, it's a total different vibe to the arena wrestling that you're used to seeing. You know, I'd like to think that they'd listen, and then they would think of turning up, and then when they did turn up, they'd go, oh wow, okay, this is also great, you know.
And that's what I'm hoping that happens out of this pandemic, is now there's no longer like, there's nothing to do on a Friday night. No, we've been stuck in the house. There's wrestling down in our town. Let's go check it out. Some live theater, live performances. Plus, if you've only watched wrestling on TV, you're going to see you're watching a 2 to 3 minute match. Very rarely do they go to a commercial break, but when I'm at an independent show, I might see a 10, 15 minute match, and it's awesome. So
completely different vibe, man.
That's my rant. Again, no question. Just ranting and making you agree with me. So, all right, Jody Fleisch, we want to thank you for being a part of the lockdown sessions.
Thank you.
We want to make sure we're buying tickets when we see you come near our towns. And we definitely want to check out Fighting With My Family on DVD. Because I imagine them royalty checks just going to be rolling in.
Oh, yeah, man.
All right.
Can't move without knocking them over, you know?
You bet, man. Take care, Jody. Thank you very much.
That's one. Thank you, brother.